Hi guys, today I wanted to do a bit of a presentation on drug usage um, and I basically am going to use as a source for the data for this map that you're seeing here the United Nations, I believe it was World Health Organization report on drug use. They had one in 2010 and they had one in 2014. So I'm just going to look at some of the maps that they put out and see what we can find. So first of all, we have here use of cannabis broken down by country, and quite helpfully, they've always got Europe kind of broken out here separately because it's a bit small in this area. And I'll be focusing mainly on, ethnically European countries. So, Australia, New Zealand, and, down here, here and there. Um, what's interesting straight up is if you look at these numbers, percentage of population using cannabis, basically adult population. I mean, I actually believe there's probably people above 64 using cannabis, but I guess the survey didn't capture it. And just as a, obviously word of caution on this kind of data, I mean, I think this data is probably highly flawed. It could be politicized. There could be all sorts of errors in the capture. I mean, it's probably, and I haven't looked into exactly how the information was captured, but I think a lot of it's sort of expert opinion. So, experts can be in all sorts of ways politically biased. So let's not take any of these maps, completely at face value. Let's take them with a grain of salt. But it's interesting to look at. And unfortunately, we often don't have any other sources of data. So I'm going to just assume that it's not totally off when looking at this data. So if you look at the colors, this sort of dark teal green here means that more than 10% of the population uses cannabis. And straight away you can see that it's the United States, Canada, France, and Iceland. Interesting. I'm quite confused how all that cannabis makes its way to Iceland. But and then down here, unfortunately, I don't know what that nation is. Actually, I am going to look these nations up as they go, though. So that is Nigeria, actually. So apparently, cannabis use is quite heavy in Nigeria as well. The second tier, we find Australia, New Zealand, Italy, Austria. I believe this guy is Estonia. Uh, so, I mean, most Western European nations, Spain here, have fairly heavy cannabis use. So, I mean, remember that this second grade of blue or teal is still up to 10% of the population. So generally that is skewed more towards men than women. So you can probably double these figures for men. Um, and importantly, for the United States and Canada and also France, it's more than 10% of the population. So I mean, I find that pretty intense. Generally, women are not as heavy drug users as men, so are we saying 20% of Americans or Canadians are men are cannabis users? That's uh, that's pretty heavy. And France is pretty similar. And Iceland, I find very surprising. So anyway, let's look at what else they have here. Then we have use of cocaine. Obviously, this is significantly lower. You can see the numbers here are, in the 1%. Although, again, France, Canada, Spain, England, Ireland, United States, Brazil, even, and Australia, also South Africa, Italy as well, Holland as well here, above 1% of the population. So, considering that, and it apparently it contains all types of cocaine here. Considering how expensive it is, that's Still significant. I'm guessing there's some overlap with with cannabis users, but I wouldn't say it's I don't think it's 100% overlap. I'm sure there's some cocaine users that don't use cannabis. So, you can to some degree add these numbers, maybe not pure addition, a fractional addition. But again, Western Europe and North America and Australia at the top of this usage. And be interesting to see whether in South Africa there's the white or the black population. I'd assume that, a lot of it is the white population just from a financial point of view. The same probably goes for Brazil and Chile here. Then the next drug that we have here is ecstasy. And again, much the same picture. Interestingly, not much in Brazil, but again, we don't know if this data is correct. But also in Central and Eastern Europe, except for the Czech Republic, so the Czech Republic is known to have a big amphetamines problem. But except for the Czech Republic and Estonia here, actually Central and Eastern Europe is not too heavy on the ecstasy. And interestingly, a lot of the rest of the world doesn't really get onto the ecstasy. Sort of the non-white countries don't use it. Again, United States, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, Holland at the forefront, and quite heavy use here in France and Spain as well. It's again, these numbers are potentially, it's above one, so who knows? I mean, it could be 3%. Again, also probably, I would say ecstasy specifically is not that much it's not a drug that cannabis users or cocaine users use. I think there's probably not that much overlap just because it's more of like a rave dance party kind of drug. But yeah, it's pretty sad. Then use of opioids. Again, America at the forefront. I think codeine is a huge problem there. The picture is a bit different in Europe this time. Interesting here, Sweden, and quite a heavy usage. Canada as well, Australia, New Zealand. I mean, it's sort of the Anglophone countries, as you can see here, always seem to be amongst the heaviest drug using countries, and then France seems to be quite heavy there as well, and often Chile and Brazil. So, and then Russia is. If we go back to ecstasy, it's pretty heavy there as well. Cocaine, I'm guessing, is just a money thing in Russia. And again, Russia, I'm not sure you can rely on those statistics. And it's very misleading when you have this. Also, what I find interesting is that they put this thing above Russia. So, let's cover up half of Russia. But anyway, this map is also very misleading, right? Really, the population of Russia is like here, and maybe down there. But, this is all empty. So let's go back to our, back to our ecstasy here, and then opioids. So Iran is, this is very interesting. Obviously most of the poppy seed plantations are in Afghanistan, so Iran and Pakistan have fairly heavy opioid use. Not so heavy in South America, and not so heavy in Central Europe. Interesting. Here we have a trend change in the use of amphetamines. So which countries have started using a lot more, and which countries stay the same, which countries have used less. What I find very interesting is Brazil having this and Chile having a large decrease. Now, is this just a difference in the way that data is collected, or is there some sort of positive, social change happening there? Same as with Kazakhstan. Who knows why? Bad increases in France, and I think that's not too surprising. Same with Germany, Holland, and I'm guessing that the use, as we saw in the earlier map, the use in the Anglophone world is already amongst the highest in the world. So I'm guessing that it's just staying stable. You only have a certain. There's only so many people that really want to get into drugs. I mean, not everyone is susceptible to it. Um, so yeah, then we'll continue with cannabis. Again, France, just incredible increase. Also here, Bulgaria, interesting enough. Oh wait, is that Romania? Sorry, that's Romania. And yeah, again, very stable in the Anglophone world here. So make of that what you want to. What's interesting is that there's just overwhelming increase in drug use in China and Russia in all types of drugs. I mean, look at amphetamines, and just in Asia in general, even Japan here. Whereas here, cannabis use is strongly going down in Japan. So make of that. I guess those are trends. I mean, just fads. Who knows? It could also have to do with certain smuggling operations being taken out. I think there is some validity to the war on drugs, even though it's a total failure. But sometimes, if you take out a certain ring of smugglers, then a certain drug is off the market for a while. Here we have the change in cocaine, and here we see the large decrease in Russia. So as we saw earlier, there's almost no cocaine use in Russia, and who knows, maybe they've cracked down on the CIA smuggling or something. Um, Again, here, very interesting, strong increase in the United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, crazy, Bulgaria, Romania. And Syria, I mean, I find that extremely interesting that they have data for 2014 for cocaine use in Syria. I don't even know how they would collect that data. I mean, it's just a shit fight there. So, there's all these little interesting things in these maps. Extra use of ecstasy, France and England going through the roof here, large increase. And the same for Malaysia actually, which is quite interesting. Yeah, some stable again. I mean, it just seems like America, Canada has sort of maxed out and everything's just stable. Interesting, a bit of a decline, large decline in Australia. So I think in the case of Australia, it's definitely because of smuggling situations, because it's just such an isolated continent. Um, Although, I mean, I guess ecstasy is something that can be synthetically produced, but I have heard that majority of drugs actually comes from Asia into Australia. So, if the Coast Guard takes out certain smugglers, I mean, that might be it for a while. What do we have here? Use of opioids. Oh, Canada. A large decrease. Sorry, yeah. So there's a large decrease in Canada, which is interesting. Here we have the opposite in Australia, large increase. So I guess the Australians are sick of the parties, and now they just want to all lie down and die. Same for England. This is Belarus, I believe. So that's quite interesting. And again, Syria. I mean, obviously it makes sense that there's more drug use. I mean, I've read all sorts of things about Captagon use amongst all the soldiers, but just that data, to be able to collect that data, I find a little bit surprising. Here we have ranking of amphetamine type stimulants in order of prevalence. So where are amphetamines the most prevalent drug? And as you can imagine, they're not in a lot of the West because it's cannabis. I mean, cannabis seems to be the most prevalent drug in most of the developed world. However, in Southeast Asia, here, in Vietnam and Laos and so on, looks like, well, not Vietnam, but Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, it seems to be the number one. And Saudi Arabia and Jordan as well. So I mean, I guess that Korea and Japan as well. So, gosh, make of that what you want. I'm guessing that this is probably also prescription drugs. Um, Here, cannabis in order of prevalence. So most of the Western world, it's the number one drug. I mean, here, Canada, all of North America, except for Germany, all of Europe pretty much. All of Oceania, all of most of the ethnically European areas of South America. Yeah. Cocaine in order of prevalence. Belarus, it's the number one drug, so that's pretty interesting. And as you'd expect here in Colombia, it's pretty high, although I think that's the second color here. Um, and then ranking of opioids in order of prevalence. So interesting, all of Asia, or most of Asia, opioids are the number one drug. But they're also quite strong in the USA and in Australia, and interesting also in Norway and Denmark. So yeah, make of that what you want. Prevalence of people who inject drugs. Oh gosh, it's what's shocking to me is Canada here. I mean, it's 1% of the population between 15 and 64. So, of truly adult males, that's probably more like 2%. It's larger than that, right? But yeah, gosh, injection I mean, I remember that from Vancouver. That's it's quite a problem there. Use of amphetamines and prescription stimulants in 2014. Well, here we go. It's quite strong in the United States, Australia again. And what's interesting is here in Scandinavia, quite strong as well. Well, that's pretty much all the information the World Health Organization has, or the United Nations. I think it's a bit of a grim picture, especially if we go back to the cannabis usage, which I don't think cannabis is a harmless drug. So here you go, above 10% of the population, and remembering male usage of drugs generally being higher, it could be up to 20% of young men or men, and again, amongst the young men, this percentage again is going to be high. If you pull that percentage down to 18 to 30-year-olds, I think those percentages would go through the roof. So in a way, it's misleading to include all the 60, 50, 60, 40-year-olds in the statistic if you want to look at youth drug problems. So if anyone knows of a breakdown by age group, gender, maybe even ethnicity, that'd be very interesting to have a look at.